What is going on, everybody? This is Jeff Lightsey Jr. here on the Black Boss channel. Here today, I got some special guests, some special Black bosses here. I have my guy, Mr. Wolfgang Broner, and Mr. Prince Holmes. These are two of my friends and we're here to discuss a bunch of different topics. Just a lot of topics that are taking place that a lot of Black people want to know about or are discussing, and this is what's happening in the Black community, whether that's the election of Joe Biden, the reemergence of Ice Cube, Black Lives Matter, and a list of topics that we'll get to. But these are two intelligent Black men that I wanted to hear from. And I know that you guys will be interested in some of the things they have to say. Fellas, how are y'all tonight?
Doing well, doing well. How you doing? How y'all brothers doing?
Pretty good, man.
I'm good. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see y'all too. So, fellas, we'll jump right into things because, like I said, we've got a few people tuning in. We're around 40 people right now. But one of the things I really wanted to, that's a big topic, one of the biggest topics is our president-elect, Mr. Joe Biden, and Vice President-elect, Miss Kamala Harris. And they will be stepping foot. It looks like Donald Trump's going to finally concede at some point. It looks like he's, done throwing his temper tantrum, and he'll finally walk out of office come January. Wolfgang, I know you have some really strong opinions, so we'll start with you. What was your thoughts when you saw that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were the president and vice president-elect, and they will be walking into the White House come January?
My I guess my initial thoughts on the election were, so kind of a little background on me. Right now I'm graduating from a Tennessee Tech poli-sci major. I also serve with the NAACP. So a lot of the things that I do outside of school is a lot of social justice work. So initially, my first reactions to the election is that in regards to Black people, I really felt like we were kind of being ignored the entire election by both sides. So I kind of had really strong opinions on what exactly would each candidate, whoever won, would do for us. Me personally, I think as a people, in regards to Black people, we have come in and saved the country a lot of times, and oftentimes we have very little to show for it. So coming into this election, I was I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of I kind of like had it up to here with the pandering on both sides, and I really just got to the point where I was like, listen, what are y'all gonna do? What are y'all gonna do for my people in our communities? Don't talk nice to us. Anybody can talk nice to us, but what are y'all gonna do? So in regards to the election, I really wanted our people to get behind the candidate that was going to offer us more, and in terms of both candidates, I really didn't think they had anything to offer. So oftentimes I was very critical of both, and oftentimes I kind of shifted my focus to more state and local because I felt like we had more power in that regards. But in terms of them winning, I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really sad at the same time. I was just kind of like straight faced. Based off of the polls that I have seen, it's clear that, the African American community really came out for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and made sure that they won the election. So in regards to me, how I feel about it, what I'm looking at now is, okay, so how are y'all going to pay us back for essentially rewarding y'all with the White House? So that's really where my thoughts in regards to the election were.
Prince, I'm coming to you. I want to go off something that Wolfgang said. And you can chime in your thoughts on Kamala and Joe as well. You guys be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, because it's a conversation by young Black men about their thoughts on what's taking place in the Black community. Now, Prince, I want to come to you with something Wolfgang said. He talked about the pandering and really not believing that either candidate sounds like they have an agenda for Black people. What are your thoughts on that, and like the agenda and what's taking place with Joe and Kamala, and your thoughts on them and what they have planned for the Black community?
I mean, I pretty much feel the same way. Like he kind of said, Black people, we kind of just go ahead and give people our vote. Like as far as Democrats, we just, that's what we settle for. That's what we know. So a lot of times our votes gets people through, like it got them through. And I mean, my expectations for them are just kind of minimal. You know what I mean? I'm not. It doesn't excite me. I feel like it's one of those things where it's less of the two evils by them getting in. But you know, like he said, like I feel the same way in regards to you're at a point where you're just ready for action, and we have to get to a point where I feel like we have to get to a point where we can kind of just think a lot more independently as far as like you know candidates know we I want to get to a point where candidates know like we're not just going to get their vote, like we have to show something you know before they actually get our vote in. I feel like that's what makes sense, you know what I mean? It's you can't just you know do things for so long and not getting anything in return or not get enough that helps you get over the hump or that makes a positive impact on your community to you know for us to be lifted up in a you know equivalent way or a fair way or a way that helps us you know just succeed and be better off in life. So
Now, something that you said that is very interesting. It's like giving your vote away. Just and we had someone who wanted the candidates to earn their vote, and that was Ice Cube, and he got a lot of criticism for what he did. Wolfgang, I'm coming to you. What do you think? Why do you think people were so critical of what Cube was trying to do? And did you agree with the way he went about it, or what were your thoughts on Cube and his contract with Black America?
So in regards to my feelings in Ice Cube, now I'm not saying for myself personally, I wouldn't have handled the situation he did because I guess my ideology is more I more lean towards like self-determination, us kind of doing our own thing, establishing our own businesses and stuff like that. But I did agree with him in the action that he took. And it goes right back to what Brother Prince just said. He came out and said that I'm not just gonna give y'all my vote. Like y'all gotta give us something before I commit to voting for you. And the reason I feel like he got a lot of flack behind it is because for so long as a community, it's like we've been programmed to lean towards one side. And oftentimes when I go out and speak with other demographics of people, it's almost like other demographics of people have more agency in their voting patterns than African Americans do. And that agency allows them to advocate for their interests and get what they want. And I feel like us as a people, I feel like we have a lot of misleaders who don't give us the correct information and don't tell us the correct ways to navigate politics. The way I view our vote is a business transaction. That's how I view our vote. The only way you get my vote is if you give me something. I'm not just going to give you my vote, because one thing they teach us all the time. One thing I've learned, over the 6 years I've been here at Tennessee Tech, is that one thing that the politicians care about is re-election and voting. And once they get that, it's kind of hard to push them the way that you want them to get pushed. So I agree with Ice Cube sentiment and trying to get something from both sides. I think there's a narrative being pushed that, Ice Cube is a Trump supporter. And honestly, if you know Ice Cube's history, then I feel like that's a very laughable narrative.
Exactly.
If people really like know Ice Cube's like life, NWA follow all that, they would know that that's not how Ice Cube rolls at all. He doesn't lean towards one side. So I agree with him in a sense in trying to approach both sides to try to get something that we want. And I think a lot of people had a lot of static towards it is because it's something that us as a community is not used to seeing. Oftentimes it's like our community is programmed to go one way and don't break outside of that. And I think we've seen that throughout history with a lot of our ancestors. Malcolm, MLK, all the greats that have come before us. We've seen how people have reacted to them as soon as they start going a different direction. That's not the status quo. So when you challenge the status quo, you're going to get a lot of static. And unfortunately, with our community over the past few years, the status quo has been vote Democrat no matter what. And Ice Cube challenged that status quo, and he got a lot of static for it. He told the truth, I believe he told the truth. You know,
Yeah.
You can't give us our vote, but
that's true. Now, Prince, I'm gonna come to you on this. Why is it that black people are just so programmed to vote Democrat, right? Like, why is it that, if you vote Republican, or if you even consider a Republican, or even talk to a Republican like Ice Cube did, all he said was, some people from the Trump campaign wanted to hear about the contract, and so he gave them he just talked to him. He didn't say he was a Trump supporter. He didn't say he was going to vote for Trump. He didn't say any of those things, but he just said he talked to him because the Biden administration didn't want to talk to after the election, and that was fine because they felt confident about winning or whatever. But why is it that you think that black people are so programmed to just vote Democrat when there are other options? Like, that there are literally other options. Not to say you have to be a Republican or have to be a Trump supporter, but why are we so programmed into just one party and believing that they can be our saviors?
I think black people are conditioned just because of like how America is set up and how it was built. It's just a whitewashing and conditioning. Like, we're just used to doing, whatever society tells and whatever the trend is. And I just feel like, we're conditioned to be democratic, and we're conditioned to, have certain mindsets. And that's what I feel like that part is. But I agree with what Ice Cube did, and his stance on it. Like I said earlier, I feel like we can't just give up our vote. And that's basically what he was saying, from my understanding of it, he was saying, that he went to, the Trump administration because they're in power right now at the moment. So, you can't do anything with who's potentially trying to be, or, who's making an effort. So why not? Hey, this is what we need. These are my ideas on, what we need for our community and what will help us benefit, going forward. So, I mean, I think that makes sense to me. It doesn't. I think people had a problem with it, like I said, just because of conditioning, and then, not wanting to be a leader and stand up for what you believe in. So, and I would say, I feel like that's the start. His idea and the effort that he made is a start that we needed, but I feel like really it's kind of been done before in different areas or different organizations. It's just kind of his made the news, so to speak, or media. And I feel like we are becoming more conscious of things like that.
Yeah.
So it is a good start, so to speak. But I completely agree with what he did and, how he did it.
Once again, I'm talking to Prince and Wolfgang, two young black men in their 20s, and we're discussing some of the issues and some of the topics that are taking place in the black community. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. This is a conversation a lot of people don't have. It's not a conversation you're going to see on mainstream media, on television, and these two young men are very bright and very smart and very good at what they do. Now, I'm going to read you all some statistics now, and I kind of want to get your take on it. So we know that the civil rights movement really jumped off in the 60s, right? Like, we saw a lot of boycotts and all kinds of things that took place, the revolution of Malcolm and Martin and Elijah Muhammad and all these different, Rosa Parks, and pick your favorite, civil rights activists or whatever, took place in the 60s. So this dates back to 67. Basically the real median household income by race since 1967 to 2014. So it's basically the household income of cultures, of demographics. We got black people, we got non-Hispanic white, we got Hispanics, we got Asians. And I'm going to read you what the house median was in 67 and what it is now, and just kind of get your thoughts on this. So black people back in 1967, the house median was $28,800. In 2014, which is just 6 years ago, so there ain't much really changed, it's $35,400. So it's only went up. It's went up less than 10 grand over the course of 60 years. That's pretty incredible. So we'll go to Hispanics. Their average median was $38,000, and now it's at 42. Non-Hispanic white was $52,000. It's up to 60. And then Asians was at 64. Theirs only started in 85, and it's up to 74. So out of all of these median household numbers, out of all the money, black people are in last place, right? Like, we've been voting Democrats since the 60s, since the civil rights. Like, you would think since the civil rights movement, we would have made more progress. Fellas, I'm going to come to y'all on this, and whoever can answer, Why is it that our median income is still in last place and has jumped up less than 10 grand? I kind of find that incredible over 60 years. Either one can answer.
Oh, okay. Did you want to?
Yeah, just like what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on it is to tell you the truth, the fact that our income has went up like less than 10%, to me that it isn't something to be happy about, because I think there's a difference between income and wealth. So oftentimes when people, people tell me, well, black income has gone up, since the 60s and whatnot, oftentimes I have to counteract with them and say, like, I mean, yeah, that's cool and all, but income doesn't equal wealth. What's our wealth? Do we even have any type of wealth to pass down? Because, that's often a conversation that, we're always having. Black people need to build generational wealth. And when I look at the wealth numbers compared to the income numbers, I feel like wealth numbers tell like a very different story. So when I hear people talk about the fact that, black people's income has only went up like less than it has went up, to your point, it's only gone up like less than 10%. That's not nothing to clap about, while other groups have gone up like a considerably more percentage. However, when you look at the data statistics regarding wealth, it tells an even bigger story. When you look at the statistics regarding black wealth and the racial wealth gap,
yes,
we don't have no wealth.
No.
We don't have no wealth, and that has happened over the years that we have consistently voted Democrat. So it's like, as black people, we can have all the income we want, but what good is the income if we can't even pass it down to our kids so they'll be straight too? You know what I'm saying? Because that's what the white people do. They build up all this wealth, and then that's how you have all their kids being able to get into these fancy colleges. Aside, additionally adding the racism, but you have all their kids, that grow up with all this wealth, that didn't really work hard to obtain the wealth. It was just given to them. And unfortunately, in a situation like that with black people, yeah, we have a lot of income, but we don't have a lot of wealth to pass down through our generations. So oftentimes when I think of black people, in our income levels, that's something that really needs to be focused on. And I'm gonna be real. I'm a big like pro reparations type of person.
Okay.
And at this point, I personally believe the only way to correct the income levels and the wealth gap between us and other races is we need some reparations. Y'all need to run us what y'all owe us, because over the years, y'all have enacted policies that have literally destroyed our wealth gap and have made it wider. And at this point, I don't foresee like another 60 years of doing the same thing is going to fix that.
Prince, you got something?
I mean, yeah, I just think it's a testament of like us not having anything. Like we don't own anything. We don't have any land. We don't have a good knowledge of like, financial literacy and things like that. And these times, like we don't spend our money well. We don't keep our money in our community. So it's like we don't have anything. So I think that's a big part of it. How can you expect to expand upon your wealth if you don't know or you don't have the knowledge? And I think, even further than that, like I feel like, yeah, we need reparations, but we need our own kind of everything, just to have respect. And I feel like when you have a economic wealth behind you, then you get that respect, and then you become a force to be reckoned with in society. You know what I mean? I feel like if we use all the money that we spend a lot of money. We spend billions as Black people. If we can find a way to keep that within ourselves, at least funnel it through ourselves, through our own businesses and stuff like that, and figure out how to uplift ourselves in those type of ways, then we'll be a more respectable community, and be able to just support each other that way better. So
to your point, Prince, the black community spends over $1 trillion per year in the United States. And that dollar, the black dollar, stays within its community. It's like an hour, right? Like the black dollar only recycles within the black community for like less than an hour, whereas like the white dollar stays in it for a week or 2 weeks or something. It's just like crazy numbers behind that. Don't get me talking, but like that is something that is like, that's a fact. Like you can look that up. Now, you guys touched on something about the reparations thing. And I want to come to you, Prince, first for this. Like how do you think reparations will benefit, in what form, or if you have a form that it should be distributed as far as like the reparations? And we'll go to you, Wolfgang, as you brought it up too. How do you feel like America should distribute or disperse reparations? And how do you think that should work? And in what ways would you like to see that? Because both of you guys seem to be pro reparations and black people getting what they ultimately deserve.
That's a good point. Like I said, I do believe in reparations. I don't exactly know how to do or the best ways to go about it, but I think it makes sense to, for the country just to acknowledge that, Black people are behind in wealth because of, how we built this country literally off the free labor of us. So how could you, I feel like you should at least be able to acknowledge that and acknowledge that, okay, we do owe the Black community something, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
they deserve something. So we deserve something. So how to reward that, I'm not exactly sure about, how to go that direction and make it make sense. So
Wolfgang, what are your thoughts on reparations? And how do you, if you have a way, how should it be distributed, or what should Congress or the government do to make sure Black people get what they deserve?
So in regards to reparations, typically there's somebody that I follow. His name is Dr. William Darty. But he oftentimes this is oftentimes his specialty. So I encourage all the viewers that go research everything he has said in regards to reparations and the racial wealth gap. Again, his name is William Darity Jr. But he the way that he has described the way reparations would go, pretty much everybody would get a check. That check would be, extensive. Like we're not talking like $1,000 check. We're talking like closer to like 100,000, because I think a lot of people have to consider that, when we first got to the United States, our ancestors as slaves, they weren't cheap at all. You had to have money. You had to have money to purchase, a slave back then. So think about throughout the years how the value of that has steadily gone up. To be quite frank with you, the United States owe African Americans like a good $1 trillion for everything that we have put into this country. The inventions that, there are 1,000 inventions that African Americans have made that we don't even know about because, white people have came in and stolen, those contributions to the United States. Like literally everything has amounted to $1 trillion. And I personally believe the way it needs to be handled is that every African American who is the descendant of a slave needs to receive a check for that. And it's very easy to determine. It's very easy to determine if you were a descendant from a slave, because, if people do their census, then at some point you're going to come to the United States Census where you're not able to trace back to your family, because at some point we weren't considered human. So they weren't keep counting us on the census. So that's a way to prove like who all deserve, who all should get a check. And I think once everybody gets a check, it's important to do what Brother Prince was talking about. Do I believe there are some people in our community that have financial literacy? Yes, I do. And it is incumbent on them to make sure that they teach the rest of us. I'm not going to sit here and cap. I'm not very good with financial literacy. That's why oftentimes I look to more like business type people to kind of like, tell me things as far as like investing and savings account and stuff like that. So, that's what needs to happen. Like our business minded folks within our community need to be willing to step up and teach the folks literacy, and then from that we take the checks that we rightfully owe and we invest it back into our communities. Like I feel like once we get our and oftentimes I speak and get, because people often tell me like, oh, quit talking about reparations, we might not get it. I was like, well, they said we wouldn't be freed, and look at us now. So, I just, just let me have my optimism.
No, it's definitely because it is. What was you saying, Prince?
Well, I was gonna say that's my thing about reparations. Like, how do you, how do you determine like who gets a check? Like, I mean, you alluded to it and stuff like that, but it's like, not only do you try to, you have to figure out who gets a check and stuff like that, but it goes back to the financial literacy. Like, what did people do with their, the money from the stimulus? People buying all type of dumb shit. So it's like, and then you have, you know what I mean? Like I don't look at myself as like, I look at myself as like an average individual with, in regards to financial literacy. So it's like, we're gonna get that money. We already don't spend it within our community. So it's like, how do you determine who gets that money and then make sure we're using that money to benefit, your own household? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to just give people money and then we're not doing anything productive with it. It's just like, you're giving it up to give it right back to the white man. So it's like, I feel like we need like a plan that actually makes sense to work, to that. So that's why, I kind of question reparations. Like I agree with it. I just have no clue how you make that make sense to give everybody, their just due.
No, I definitely get that. I definitely get that. One thing that I would say is if we ever got to the point where we did receive reparations, it would be such a turning point for America that I think that Black people would have finally come to a point where they are taking in the teachings and the lessons of Black people who may not be in mainstream media, but that are preaching how to take care of yourself financially and how to take care of your community. If you ever got to the point where you got some reparations, obviously there would be some knuckleheads, right? Like there'll be some people that go out and buy a bunch of Louis bags and Gucci belts and all kinds of stuff like, oh, we have that in our community. And that's fine. It happens. But I think that if we ever got to the point where reparations were demanded by our people and it was granted to our people, then there would be some people at the forefront who would be able to help our people get where we need to be. That's just my thoughts on the reparations, but I'm definitely a fan of reparations. Wolfgang, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say to your point, I think the number one most important thing to do before we start demanding is our people need to get on code. Like, and what I mean by on code, like everybody now, of course, to your point, Jeff, like there's going to be a few knuckleheads who disagree, but I think the important thing is that the majority of us get on code. And what I mean by code is like we're on one accord about what we want. We on one accord about what we want to see, et cetera, et cetera. And once we get on code, then I think when we come to the things such as like reparations and who gets reparations and what we're going to do with reparations, because we are on code, then once we get those checks, we'll know what to do with them. And I think this election cycle is a perfect opportunity, because I think like us as a people, we have obviously seen, I think a lot of stuff has been exposed during this election cycle that people have tried really hard to keep secret, but it's out in the open now. I'll even say for myself, the way I think ideology is very different from how I felt like 4 years ago. And that has developed based on what I have seen when I've done my advocacy work and the research I have done. So I think in terms of this election, it's a perfect opportunity for us as a community, us as a people, to get on code with what we want. And then once we're on code with what we want, then once we come to these conversations about the policy demands that we're asking for, there ain't gonna be no questions. We all know what to do with it.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Now, one thing, once again, I'm talking to Prince Holmes and Wolfgang. These are two young black men. They're in their 20s, and we're just discussing some of the biggest topics that are taking place in the black community. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. We want this conversation to be pushed to the masses because it's some real talk by people that are in their 20s. A lot of people say they want to hear from the so-called millennials or Gen Z or whatever. I mean, these are young men they're here expressing their opinion. Now, one person that was super influential and super huge in the black community, has been for a very long time now, is Mr. Barack Obama, the President Barack Obama, former president, number 44. And he's pushing his book, and he's on a lot of publications right now. He's talking to a lot of people. But I feel like the temperature has changed on Barack Obama slightly within the black community. I'm not going to say to the masses, because he's still, for a lot of people, can walk on water and can do no wrong. But Obama, to some folks, he's becoming a little more of a human-like figure and not like a god-like figure. Like to me, I'm gonna just speak personally. When Obama hit the scene and became the president back in 2008, I don't know how old you guys were. We're all in our 20s, so we were fairly young, and like it was just surreal, right? Like the first black president, and he re-up and did it again in 2012, and it just, like I said, he's like almost like a god-like figure, right? But now I think the realism from Obama, whether you felt like he didn't do enough for black people, or even some of the comments that he's made recently about either black men or the black community, is been kind of shocking to some folks. So I just want to check the temperature with you guys. What are your thoughts on President Obama from like 2008 when he first got elected to maybe now that you're older? We're talking 12 years later. How have your thoughts, if they have, changed about President Obama from when you first were introduced to him to now? Either one can answer first.
I feel like my thoughts have definitely changed. Of course, as people, we just naturally grow. But my feeling, my perception of President Obama have not changed, in the sense that, initially, well, first off, I voted for him on his second term. I was old enough to vote at that point. So like I said, like the feeling that he gave me was just one of confidence, so to speak, like for myself and my community. I don't know, like at that time, you kind of felt like you won something, or you were a part of something like that we just overcame something. That was the feeling. We overcame something as a community in this country. Like I said, definitely bigger than yourself. And I feel like the biggest thing that he has done, like regardless of what people say, I know like sometimes people say he didn't do anything for black people, and I somewhat kind of agree. I don't know, I go both ways with that. But I feel like I said, the biggest thing I feel like that he has done is just the imagery of a black man in power, at the highest power, over a country that is fundamentally built off of racism, and also like a country that's potentially the strongest in the world. So it's like that imagery. I compare it to like what that can do for black people in America. Is like, just think about like if people, the imagery of Jesus being black. You know what I mean? I believe that Jesus is black, or that Jesus was black. And just think about like what that imagery would have done at that time, in the time of Christianity going about history, of people knowing that Jesus is black. Like think about that, what that would have done. Like what would that have done in this country? Would there be slavery? Yeah. Probably, but I mean maybe not. But just like I said, the imagery of a black man, what that can do, consciously, definitely subconsciously, to children, who were 10 around that time, just to see, you already have these thoughts in your mind. I want to be a president. I want to be, an astronaut when you're young. So when you see that subconsciously, this black man, whether he messes up the country or not, like you don't really know growing up, but just to see that, it does a lot. And that's what I feel like he's done, subconsciously or unintentionally. That's the biggest thing that he's done. So,
Wolfgang, your thoughts on President Obama? Have they changed from 2008 until now? And if they have, like, what kind of caused that?
So To answer your question, yeah, my feelings have definitely changed. For me, when President Obama first stepped on the scene in 2008, I was in middle school. So I was nowhere near like close to vote around that time. So, me being like a 13, 14-year-old kid, you see a black man running for the highest office in the land as president, and then being in the American education system, so you're being taught a little bit about African American history. um the imagery was super influential. I will say that representation is influential in a sense. And even in 2012, it was the same thing. I was still a strong supporter of Obama. Even but I still wasn't 18. I turned 18 in 2014. So the first election I got to vote in was the 2016 one. So, but as I graduated, got the tech, started, we started doing research. Um, I would definitely say my feelings towards Obama start to change after the election of Trump. Now, the reason why I say that is because after he was elected, I spent a lot of time looking at data to try to figure out how did that happen. Now naturally, were there people that voted for Trump, because they're racist? Yeah. Um, but I didn't. For some reason, something was telling me that wasn't the full context of the situation. So oftentimes, in class we would dove deep into it, and what honestly started kind of turning me off from Obama is the things I started, finding out that he did during his presidency that disgruntled a whole lot of Americans. And then, when Hillary Clinton stepped on the scene, um, she kind of did the whole Democrat spit where, she just panders to like the Democrat constituencies and just assume that, they're going to turn out and vote for her. And unfortunately, the 8 years that people had to deal with Obama where they didn't really see the hope and change that, he was saying that he would promise, honestly, that the turnout from that kind of waned. So when I think of Obama, I think of someone who had all the power in the world to do what he could have wanted for African Americans, but for some reason he chose not to, and he did it for everybody else, and ultimately, and it's gonna be kind of wild for me to say, but I think the way that establishment Democrats have moved, like up, still have moved. It ultimately is the reason why we had to deal with Donald Trump for 4 years. The pandering does not change people's material conditions, if that makes sense. And oftentimes, I often have to tell people, I'm always cool for representation. I love symbols, but we need to stop. That doesn't need to be the bar. Oftentimes it seems like our people go for representation and nothing else. Um, and representation is not going to lead towards our liberation. So the imagery is cool. Like I love the imagery, but unless we're not demanding something from the folks that look like us, then like we're going to be in the same situation.
No, I definitely agree with that. What was you saying, Prince?
I watched his interview with the Breakfast Club, and I don't know if y'all seen that, but
Mm.
he kind of answered some of these questions in regards to like, like I feel like he made a good point about people. We vote and then we kind of like think our job is done. Basically, I feel like we have to do a lot more in regards to holding our locals accountable, and then going forward to that, just making sure we're paying attention to everything, making sure we're paying attention to everything locally and all the way up. And then on top of that, he mentioned stuff about, is he has power, but it's not, it's not like he can just, do everything he wants to, like Trump's doing. Like he's doing some things he's doing illegally. Like, and then on top of that, you have to be able to be professional and establish relationships with people so that you can, you know what I mean, do things and get things passed. You can't just, you know, break laws, so to speak. So I think he mentioned a few good points in there. Also about, um, like I said, just being professional and working with people. So yeah.
Well, I will say something though, Prince. To your point on, I'm talking to Wolfgang and Prince, and we're three young black men in our 20s discussing some of the issues in the black community and some of the things we're talking about President Barack Obama and how our perceptions may have or may have not changed about Obama. Now, one thing I will say, Prince, from that Breakfast Club interview, I heard a lot from President Obama, and he was like, because they asked him directly, like, what do you say to the people that say you did nothing for black people? And he was like, I did, a lot for black people. I passed one of the lowest conviction rates in the American history during my time in office. And that was really what, like, his sticking point. Like, that's really what he stood firm on, was like incarceration rates and prisons weren't being built as fast and things like that. But what we have to consider is not all black people prisoners. You know what I'm saying? Last I checked, neither one of you guys have been to jail. I ain't never been to jail. So, like, what about us that are out here on the grind every day, and our wealth gap still hasn't grown, right? Like, the wealth gap has only gotten larger, since the 60s. Now, not to say, like, he did bring up the point, he can't change 400 years of what's taking place in America over the first 400 years in 8 years, right? But I think it's like when you talk to black, at least at that level, when you talk to black, people get scared of you. And it's like, oh, the big scary black man, because you're bringing up things like reparations, or you're saying what I'm going to do for the black community, at least during that time. Now we're seeing a change, right? Biden came out with a plan for Black America. Trump came out with his platinum plan or whatever. So now it's like more socially accepted. You see Netflix with a Black Lives Matter category, and Hulu and Amazon and Spotify. Everybody's got all black because of George Floyd. But over the first 400 years of our existence here in this country, it was like if you did something that was too black, it was unacceptable. So that's the only problem. And it wasn't that it took for a murder, which we've seen plenty of black men get murdered on camera, but it took for like an egregious murder by a cop on camera for this awakening, is kind of what I've been calling it, the Black awakening, to take place. To that, you guys say what? Because that's kind of what I've seen over the course of 2020, essentially. Because I definitely think that, like I said, if you talk to black, some of that stuff can come back, or at least in a politician's mind, can come back and bite you. And that is something that, we can argue or whatever, but it is interesting to see that. Now, one thing I did bring up is the Black Lives Matter movement. We see, these protests going around across the country for, against police brutality, in the name of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. Like, there's so many, I could go on and on. It's unfortunate, but what are you guys' thought on the Black Lives Matter movement, and particularly the organization? Like, do you guys, if you do know anything about the organization, what are kind of your thoughts about the Black Lives Matter organization as a whole? Do you think it's a fraud? Do you think it's ran by Antifa? Like, what are kind of some of your thoughts on
that? So for me, I am more of a believer in the statement Black Lives Matter than the national organization. Reason why I say that is because I'm real hesitant about organizations receiving millions of dollars, but the hood ain't changing. If that makes sense to you, all, it's like, during the summer, I've seen, Black Lives Matter get a whole bunch of donations. However, people's material conditions, still haven't changed. And plus we're in the middle of a pandemic, so there are still people who can't make rent payments, still people who can't afford to buy food, still people who are unemployed. So oftentimes when I see national organizations who claim they're fighting on the behalf of Black lives, and they're receiving a whole bunch of money from other organizations, but nothing is changing physically, conditionally in our communities. A part of me kind of falls back on it because I kind of think there's something suspicious going on, but that's kind of me, kind of being in my head a little bit. But I think that local organizations have a lot. They have a lot more. How should I put it? Radical policies than the national organization. Um, I haven't really seen the national organization really do anything um over the 4 years that we've been dealing with this. They've been kind of quiet, and then all of a sudden I see them start speaking again once Joe Biden wins the White House. So small things like that catch my attention. My dad always tell me, watch out for the little things, because the little things kind of tend to tell the bigger story behind it. So it's those little things I've been seeing from the national organization that has made me kind of hesitant about the organization as a whole. And then additionally, I don't know if y'all ever saw this, but the founders, they started some static with Ice Cube,
Yes.
when he came out with his contract with Black America, and that rubbed me the wrong way, because I'm kind of sitting here thinking like, okay, we have two candidates who are really pandering to both sides and not really offering anything for us, but are demanding for our vote. And then you have brother Ice Cube come out and say, with contract with Black America, and then next thing I know, I'm looking at a news clip of Roland Martin and one of the founders of Black Lives Matter going in on Ice Cube for the contract with Black America.
I watched that interview, and they definitely were not a fan of Ice Cube at all.
Yeah, and like in that by itself rubbed me the wrong way, because it's like, why are you mad that he's trying to get something for the communities that y'all are quote unquote speaking for? Like why are y'all mad about that? Why are y'all kind of coming at him with this energy of like, you don't know what you're doing, instead of like, hey, let's work together on it. And when I saw that, it kind of confirmed that I personally just feel like there's some clout chasers. I think there are definitely performative activists, and I definitely consider and I'm being very specific when I say this, like the founders. I consider them to be very performative. The reason I'm very specific with that is because there are local chapters around the United States who are actually doing the work that that holds up to the statement that our lives matter. It's just, unfortunately, the folks who run the organization at the top, they're not about the same thing. We have a chapter here in Nashville, and they got to beg every month just to get funded from the national organization, and these folks getting millions of dollars.
Man.
And it's stuff like that, that small thing, that's what kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And I think when you actually talk to people and ask them about it, they ain't gonna say it out loud, but if you ask them and talk to them about it, they'll tell you that that's some things that they have peeped up on.
Yeah, definitely. Leave your comments down below on your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter as an organization as a whole. We'll be pulling up some different comments throughout the live. Prince, kind of give your thoughts on Black Lives Matter.
I think to your testament about the Ice Cube thing, it goes back to what you were saying about being on one accord. Being on one accord as far as like we have to come together, and sometimes we have to realize that everybody's angle is going to be different. Like kind of like Obama mentioned in his his interview with the Breakfast Club. Him as a politician, he's going to come at it different than Tamika Mallory or somebody in civil rights or social activism. So it's like I agree with you there that sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture, and what Black Lives Matter, what they're doing, and what Cube's his idea was. The concept is just to uplift the Black community and make sure that we're getting our justice. You know what I mean? So that's where it's all coming from. So it's like you can't necessarily try to call out people. You can call out people. You can't necessarily. It's not. What are we really doing? You know what I mean? If the bigger picture is the common, we have a common goal, then what are we really doing? We can fight over the minute details. You know what I mean? At a later time. But I think on the surface level, I think Black Lives Matter is like that's everything. It makes the most sense. Simply like how can um, they like to compare it to the All Lives Matters, but it's like how can all lives matter when Black lives are the lives that are on fire, so to speak. So at a surface level, I do think it makes sense. Um, in other ways, I've seen little stuff about just Black Lives Matter and their founders that kind of rub me the wrong way, but I don't necessarily know all the details, so I kind of stay out of that stuff. I just think on the surface, like it makes sense. And one thing I would like to see is where money is going as well. Where's money going? How is it being spent? They can be more transparent with that, but so can a lot of other organizations, but especially ours, because they have our we're their priority. So um, if we're giving all this money, for ourselves to an organization for ourselves, and we're still seeing the same results, or we're not, gaining anything in our neighborhoods, then what are we really doing? You know what I mean? It's no better than voting for Trump, so to speak. You know what I mean? We're not really getting anything. So, um, I agree with those testaments.
No, definitely. Once again, I'm talking to two young Black men in their 20s, Prince and Wolfgang. They're here discussing some of the biggest topics that take place in the Black community. We're talking about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Black Lives Matter, all of these things that are taking place in our community. That need to be addressed and that need to be heard from some people who aren't 40 and 50 and 60 years old. These are 20-year-old men. We're 20-year-old men discussing these things, and I think it's important to hear from people from different backgrounds about what's taking place. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I wanted to hear you guys' opinion on it about the Black awakening that has taken place in 2020. Right, we saw the murder of George Floyd on camera. And we saw a lot of people, with the protest and obviously the killing of Breonna Taylor in my hometown of Louisville, just come together and protest, hold hands with each other, go lock and step over, the wrongful killing of Breonna, the wrongful killing of George Floyd, and others like Ahmaud Arbery. What are kind of your thoughts? And we've seen companies like major white-owned companies react to this, right? Whether it's getting rid of Uncle Ben's and Aunt Jemima, adding a Black Lives Matter section to said company, whether it's Spotify or YouTube or Netflix or whatever. What were you guys' thoughts? And even like your thoughts now to this day, but especially when that first took place, what were your thoughts when you kind of saw these changes from these companies? Did you think anything of it? Did it mean anything to you? What kind of was going on through your mind as this kind of Black awakening, is what I call it, kind of took place?
I feel like a lot of it was just like, marketing. Like, I mean, what's 10 million, 20 million to $1 billion, you know what I mean, organization, or what is Black Lives Matter on a basketball court or on the street for a block? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? It's nothing tangible that we can hold on to and be like, all right, this is gonna benefit my son or my daughter or my cousin. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like business wise, how these companies are trying to get in type thing. I feel like it's just all fluff, in my opinion. I even with like the NBA, like I feel like they could have did a lot more. Like I feel like they could have used the power that they had, their voices that they had, to really be like, hey, like this is what we need. They could have made their demands just on, from sports wise. Like they could have left it at sports, whatever the case may be. This is what we need for the Black community within these, billion-dollar sport companies. You know what I mean? Like, and they could have used that to their advantage. I feel like we didn't follow code or come to a code, so to speak, in some of those areas, and we could have did it better with that. So,
Wolfgang, your thoughts?
So my thoughts is when the stuff during the summer went down, you know, I'm sure y'all can agree it was just another reminder of how America, you know, does our people. But you know, following that, when I seen all the companies, whatnot, unfortunately, you know, I have to agree with Brother Prince. Like, I really only saw it as a marketing thing because, I guess with me personally, if you come out here with a Black Lives Matter statement and in the very same city where your cops are harassing the African American community, then there's a disconnect there, and obviously you don't believe in that statement as much as you're saying it, and and unfortunately, you know, companies know how our people work. Sometimes, you know, they come out with, you know, a pro-black advertisement, and then, you know, for some reason, you know, a section of our people want to flock to them because, you know, they feel like that company cares about them, when in reality it's like, nah, bro, it's a marketing tool so they could get your money. You know, you know, I'm sure y'all seen, like, in many cities like around the United States, you know, they've had streets, you know, they got one in Chattanooga, Tennessee here, you know, they got one, they painted one here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
You know, they have Black Lives Matter on
Black Lives Matter,
yeah, Black Lives Matter on the streets in you know, in the very same cities where a lot of these situations don't went down. You know, Jeff, with you being in Louisville, you know, they're passing laws in Breonna's name, but they're not charging the killers. And it's that, and you know, and it's that type of stuff that makes me sit here and think, like, we really on our own out here, because it's like, dang, they really just pander to us, you know, to try to strip what little resources we have from us, you know, just so they don't have to do right by us. So again, like, I'm all for symbolism, I'm all for imagery and symbolism, but there's levels to the shit. Like,
yeah, definitely.
like, hey, you know, hey, shout out to Call of Duty for the Black Lives Matter messaging. What's the company?
Ain't giving nobody any money though, you know.
Right. Yeah, like, what's the company doing to change the, like, I keep coming back to material conditions, but you know, that's really what it is. You know, a lot of our people just want a roof over their heads and food in their bellies, and we can't even get that. So, you know, the imagery is cool, but that imagery ain't putting a house over our heads, or, you know, or food in our bellies, or it's not stopping the cops from harassing us. So, like, when I see imagery like that, it's like, who cares, you know? And I hate to be the guy that, you know, people often say I'm the type of guy that, you know, that kind of shit on people's parade. But it's really like, I ain't trying to be that type of person. I'm just trying to keep it a stack, you know? It's kind of like a fake friend, you know. You got these fake friends in your face, but they doing dirty work behind your back. Is that something you would be happy about?
Yeah. No, yeah, like that. I mean, that's very true. I mean, that is, like you said, I mean, all of it, a lot of times it does come off, whether it comes off, whether it's genuine or not, it doesn't always come off as genuine, right? Like, it comes off as marketing, as trying to get, you know, appeal to a certain demographic, because we see that the black dollar is real, right? Sometimes I think whether it's the black vote or the black dollar, to certain companies or even to Americans, even to black people, it doesn't always seem like it's real, simply because it's not always right there in our face. But the impact is always felt. Whether we go back to, like I said, the election, black people were felt in this election because of cities like Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, like those who helped put Biden over the top. And so it's the same with the black dollar. I think companies saw an opportunity to either garner more black dollars or to make sure they kept their black dollars. right? Because if Netflix is doing it and Call of Duty's doing it and Fortnite and Nike and all these different people are doing like Black Lives Matter segments on their t-shirts or on their websites or on their, pick your platform, I need to make sure I'm in on that boat or I'm going to miss out on some dollars. Wouldn't you agree?
That's 100% facts. Oftentimes I have to remind, whenever I'm in spaces such as these, oftentimes I have to remind people that Black people, we are a lot more powerful than what we give ourselves credit for. Our vote, our money, our minds, our bodies, we are a lot more powerful than what people give us credit for. And I'm tired of us going for the bare minimum. With all the power we got, we should be asking for everything. And that's just personally how I feel about it. When I look at around the United States at all the companies and whatnot that are filled with majority of African Americans, I think I'm like, they could easily like leave and do that on their own. Kind of actually speaking on the since you brought up the NBA thing, I love NBA to death, love it, love to watch it. But it would have been a whole lot more impactful if they did not play until shit got changed. That would have been a lot more impactful. And as a guy who loves watching the NBA, I was willing to take, I'm willing to be like, okay, we ain't playing sports until, these cops get arrested for killing our people. I can live with that. And I hope that other people, feel the same way I do on that. But, even going farther from that, oftentimes when I think of like the sports, NBA, NFL, can't nobody tell me that LeBron James and all these top NBA players cannot leave the NBA right now and do their own thing. The way that they run stuff in the NBA, when it comes to agents, when it comes to deals, when it comes to fans and all that stuff, can't nobody sit here and tell me that they cannot leave the NBA right now and start their own thing. Like, if people tell me that, I won't believe you, because like you can't, like how smart LeBron James is, the way that he has maneuvered the NBA, and he's basically been able to get what he wants, and other players around the NBA too. I think it's silly for us to assume that those brothers can't come together with the powerful minds that they have, leave the NBA and do their own thing, because the NBA is, clearly not going to do, the owners that own the NBA, they're clearly not going to do enough for the high percentage of players in the NBA. And I feel that way about the NFL too.
I definitely agree with you. First time I'm gonna come to you right after this. One thing, I was on a kind of like a panel like this with a brother named Willie D. He was a rapper. He's now turned active. He's really big in the Houston community. He was part of Rap A Lot record signed by Jay Prince, part of the Ghetto Boys. He's someone who's had a lot of money. And so what he kind of told me, because I kind of brought up those same points Wolf just brought up, but what he told me was, when Black people, or when somebody gets a bunch of money, like he was very young and got a bunch of money when he signed his record deal. And like it was kind of the same thing. I was like, man, the NBA players, LeBron James, all these guys can leave and start their own league and do all this. Like, these guys got hundreds of millions and millions of dollars, but they're worth billions and billions of dollars, because if I'm willing to give you $150 million, then I have to make 10 times that amount to give you one person that much. And what he was saying was, the reason why people don't do that is because when you get some money, you just happy about getting some money, man. Like, you've been broke for a long time and you just happy about finally getting a bag. So I'm not trying to think about starting no league or starting this or doing that. I'm trying to collect a check, man, and enjoy my money and enjoy it, because when you start businesses and do things like that, then it's a bunch of different ways you're going to be pulled in all these different directions. Prince, I'm coming to you about anything you wanted to talk about. Sorry for cutting you off.
I was just gonna, no, you good. I was just gonna say to that, I mean, that's where, like Wolfgang mentioned earlier, coming to one accord and going to those leaders who are financially savvy. That's when we look to them to be able to be like, hey, I just made all this money. I'm 18. I just made $10 million. Like, I don't know what to do with $10 million because sometimes, a lot of times, like our parents don't have that knowledge. You know, they ain't never seen that much money. So that's where we come back to that and we say, all right, these were the financial leaders. They have to step up. But going back to earlier, I was just going to say sometimes, unfortunately, like for people to listen to the Black community, one, we have to either, you know, riot, loot, you know, smack somebody, hurt somebody, kill somebody, for white people to listen or hit them in their pockets. And I was just going back to the NBA thing, like that would have killed their pockets. Like it already is, you know what I mean? So for you know, the players not to, especially the NBA where they have a little bit more power over their money, so to speak.
A lot more. A lot more.
To not take advantage of that opportunity and realize like what they had going for them. And then you had people telling them, like, you know, Steven Jackson and other people, you know what I mean? So it's not like the knowledge isn't out there. It's just you have to be willing to think bigger than yourself. Especially like these name players, like we've been talking about LeBron, like to know that we can literally not play. We cannot play this whole season and it's gonna kill their pockets. Like we're gonna lose some money, but we're good. You know what I mean? As LeBron, like they make more money outside of their NBA contracts, you know.
Definitely. Way more.
Doing their NBA contracts. So it's like for me to have that power, you have to take advantage of that. That's what I was gonna say earlier, you know. Hitting their pockets is definitely going to be a major thing. In the NFL, they could have did the same thing with their big players, Cam Newton, whoever else, Russell Wilson. So, you know, you just have to have those guys that are willing to step up and do that. And I also, just going back to the original question of how it's like awakening people, sometimes I like to remember like my conversations like with my grandparents or just older people and them saying now it's like, this stuff has been happening. Like, this is not new. This is not new. You know what I mean? It's just on camera. It's on TV. Like, it's getting outside of our community, basically. You know what I mean? Like, we not just seeing it no more. Other people are seeing it, and they're like, all right, they really been talking about some real shit. Like, y'all fucked up. You know what I mean? So, that's just one thing, like, I always try to remember, like, this stuff has been happening. It's just now we seeing George Floyd with his, you know what I mean? This is the same as Emmett Till. It's just so.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. Once again, I'm talking to three young Black men, Mr. Brother Wolfgang, Brother Prince. I'm Jeff Lightsey Jr. Be sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, the thumbs up button as you enter. We're just talking about a list of topics, Black men discussing what's happening in our community. Young Black men in their 20s discussing what's taking place in our community. Before we get off the NBA and the sports topic really fast, I do want to go back. What, Wolfgang, you kind of touched on it, and Prince, you can chime in on this as well. What are some of their changes? Like, if you're going to hit the owner's pockets or hit the billionaire's pockets or whatever, what are some of the changes or the demands that you feel like they should have made before stepping foot back on that court or that field?
I mean, like the Breonna Taylor thing, like that, you could have started with that. Like, I feel like that case is just so plain and simple. Like, I feel like it was messed up on so many levels. There's like nothing anybody can say. Like, there's nothing, you can't justify nothing and be like, you know, well, her boyfriend shot. There's nothing. They had the wrong house. There's nothing you can say. Like, I feel like that they could have led with that and just left it with that one if they wanted to. But there's so many other things that they could have did. As far as like, I can't even think, man. You might have to come back to me real quick.
Wolfgang.
No, I definitely agree with the Breonna Taylor comment because honestly, that's what kind of started like the whole little social justice atmosphere in the NBA, in my opinion. They definitely could have started with that. Listen, we're not playing until like Breonna Taylor, you know, for all them months, all during the summer, all I heard was arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. It's like, okay, that literally could have been one demand y'all could have done. The situation that kind of started like the whole boycott of one game was the situation that happened with that brother in Wisconsin.
Yes.
So I forgot his name. I apologize. But
David Blake.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. But yeah, like that could have been another situation. You know, and honestly with me, I'm like, man, go big. Like, we not playing until y'all start charging these cops. We're not playing until y'all in qualified immunity that keeps people from getting these charges. You know, we're not playing until y'all start investing these funds into black communities, because they like to say low income and all these other fancy little
minority or people of color, all these words that don't mean black.
Right. Like, I'm being very specific. Y'all need to be donating dollars to black communities. Like, don't say low income. It needs to, you know, black communities. Like I said, like the imagery that the NBA did, you know, it's cool and all. Black Lives Matter on the court. You know, folks had a little statement on the back of their jerseys, but obviously, you know, after the NBA season, we clearly see that was not enough. Breonna Taylor's murderers are not getting charged. I haven't heard any update regarding the situation in Wisconsin. You know, and honestly, since we're speaking about it, the NBA, they took up like this big, voter registration initiative.
Yes.
They brought that up, and we already know majority of the players in the NBA are African American men. So like from that, you can assume that in the areas that they were working to increase voter turnout were in African American communities.
Yes.
NBA season about to start up like later this month. With Biden, he's making transition picks. He ain't really picking black people.
No, not black men anyway. Like, a lot of black men.
Like, he's picking, he's picking black women. He ain't picking a lot of black women, and he ain't picking black men.
Not at all.
So it's like with the, even with that in mind, and and the reason why the NBA is trying to push like this fast start to the season so they can protect their deals, so they can make sure they get money. So like you have another opportunity right there. Oh, we not doing December 22nd until Biden starts meeting our demands for giving him the White House. Like, I think that's another demand to deal with currently. They can still go back to the other demands. They can even go back to the other demands I made about Breonna Taylor, because, like, as Brother Prince was saying, we all know that situation was fucked up. We all know people were cooking the books on that and weren't really going to charge it. So we need y'all to go revisit that, because the jurors weren't told information. Y'all left stuff out, and ultimately he got hit with a BS charge. So
yeah, no, look, you're all the way right. Prince, what'd you say?
I was just gonna mention weed too. They could have really pushed with the weed, because a lot of athletes, they're talking about like how they really want to use weed for medical reasons, and it helps them with their bodies and stuff like that, not just to be high, but just it really helps them, and they don't want to be on prescriptions and stuff like that. But not to mention, they could have also pushed that in a way to help people get out of prison. You're going to legalize weed in some states, so at least those states, like, we can push to have some laws and get some stuff going with that, at least in the particular states that that it's legal in. So that's one thing right there.
That's definitely big. Now I want to stick on this, or transition just a tad bit. Once again, I'm talking with Wolfgang and Prince. These are two young black men in their 20s, and we're discussing a number of topics that are taking place in the black community, from Black Lives Matter, Joe Biden, Ice Cube, reparations. We've covered it all. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. It's a conversation that needs to be heard. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys about is the phrase defund the police. Right? This is a phrase we've been hearing for months and months, especially with all the protests that have taken place throughout this country. What are your thoughts on the phrase defund the police? Is it acceptable? Is it something that you like? Is it something that should take place? What is kind of your spin on the defund the police phrase that's going around across this country?
I'm more of an abolitionist when it comes to police. But I do believe in defund the police, because I think it's an avenue to abolition. So when I think of the term defund the police, and then when if people actually take the time to research city budgets, I think it's fairly easy to assume where that phrase came from, because when you look at a majority of city budgets, majority of the city's money goes towards police departments. So now do I think the phrase by itself can it cause people to kind of be a little hesitant? Yes, it can. But I don't think just because people are going to be hesitant towards the word that means we should stop saying the word. You know, it just means that we just got to continue to explain it, because I know when I was looking at some statistics, a lot of Americans weren't really rocking with the phrase defund the police. But then once you actually start explaining like the policies behind it, like defund the police is mean like take money away from them and put it into other areas such as education, healthcare, mental health. That's when you start seeing a shift of support within Americans in regards to it. I think it just takes people time to do, you know, their research. You know, it's not that hard to look up what the phrase means. Do the phrase by itself, you know, could it turn people off? Yeah, it could, but all it takes is like 5 seconds to research it and find out what the phrase really means. You know, I often tell people, I'm like, if you really want to know something, you will do it. So in regards to defund the police, like if you really that pressed about what the phrasing of the word, then take some time to actually research it.
Kind of like what he said, I do feel like people kind of take the phrase out of context, defund the police, because I mean, schools and teachers and stuff like that are defunded all the time. The phrase or word usage may be different, but plenty of things get defunded all the time. I personally don't feel like police, I don't feel like they need to be doing everything that they do in regards to, I feel like it makes more sense to pay some type of counselor or someone that can deal with someone that is having a psychotic breakdown, you know, in a situation where you would think to call the police and the police arrive to this type of situation. I think it makes sense where, you know, it's clearly they're having some type of psychotic break that, you know, all right, we have the funds to be able to call in another individual, have the police contain the situation, but, you know, have someone that is able to understand what's going on, how to de-escalate that situation, give funds there to, you know, a situation that makes sense, something that makes more sense to me. And really, I feel like we really just need to police our own communities. We got to have our own communities first off, have the, you know, the means economically to withstand ourselves, our own. I feel like we need our own everything, our own government, our own systems of everything.
Very true.
So that we can get to a place where we can have people that look like us and understand us and see us in the street and not be scared of us or intimidated in a negative way to make, you know, an individual, a white person feel clutched up or whatever the case may be, to where they don't know. You know, it's basically just cultural difference. They don't really know. And so, yeah, I'm not in regards to like completely abolishing the police. I don't really know about that yet. Like I'm not there yet. Like I said, I'm more of like we need to police our own type of thing. So that's where I'm at right now with that.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with you. Like you said, like both of you all said, defund the police, when you hear it, it's just so like it taking back. And I've seen a couple comments. It's like, that's a distraction, right? Like people are saying that. And it's almost like a lot of things, a lot of these phrases and things that circulate that involve the Black community aren't always started by Black people. Right, like a lot of the stuff that you see in mainstream media isn't always started by people like you, like us, right? Like it started by someone who either is trying to tear down a movement or to trying to whitewash a movement. and all that stuff ain't for us, right? Like defund the police. Who in the hell is black that probably came up with defund the police? I don't know if it was a black person that came up with that phrase. But what we can do is, like you said, allocate those funds, those millions and billions of dollars that are given to police departments, that are given to law enforcement every single year from federal and state governments, and reallocate that to communities that need it, to education system, like one of y'all said, like to these different things that take place, and not so much into putting guns in people's hands and sending strangers into our communities, killing our folks. Like that's really what I see when I hear defund the police. That's kind of how I think of it, but everybody doesn't think of it that way. But that is something that should definitely take place.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you saying?
I was just gonna mention also a thing about like police training. Like you can also adjust the training and send money that way if you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that they can do, just kind of take different angles, you know what I mean? Cultural training and stuff like that they've mentioned. So that's one thing I wanted to add in there.
No, Dev. So with defund the police, I just want to transition to our vice president-elect, Miss Kamala Harris. Now, there's a wide array of opinions of Kamala, right? Whether she's the top cop, she's the first black VP, first black woman VP, like a bunch of things. People really, when it comes to Kamala, it's either you love her or you hate her. Now, I don't really care if you guys love her or hate her, but I kind of want to know your thoughts on Kamala Harris. How do you think she can provide a sense of urgency to Joe, or if you think she will, or if she can, or if she won't, or whatever, sense of urgency for Joe to be on the side of the right side of history and to take care of the black Americans that made sure he's in office right now?
Yeah, my expectations for them are just kind of is minimal. Like I don't really have a lot of faith. I'd rather see, you know, it's just like we mentioned earlier, we just kind of gave our vote away. When we just gave it to the lesser of two evils. I will build more confidence in her and Joe Biden, you know, maybe after a year or so when I can see that they've actually done something, and then I can kind of buy into that.
Yeah, I honestly have the same. I honestly have the same feelings. I really don't expect a whole lot out of her. You know, oftentimes people told me that, you know, Kamala's going to be the one to push Joe left. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You know, if people want to believe that, I'm gonna let them believe that. Me personally, I don't personally believe that. So kind of the Brother Prince's point, it's like right now, I really don't have any expectations for them and them paying back what they owe, you know, to my people for delivering them the White House. Like I really don't have any expectations. Just honestly based off of like the news and the transition picks they have picked, you know, have chosen so far, you know, from what I have seen. Like I just really don't have any expectations of them. You know, now if that changes like later on down the years where they're actually doing something, then my opinion might change. We're allowed to change our opinions based on like the changing of the situations.
Yes.
But right now I just honestly don't have any high expectations for them. My personal opinion is that I personally feel like the Democrats have taken advantage of my people again. So, you know, with that in mind, after these 4 years passed with Biden and Harris in the White House and ain't nothing changed, we need to have an honest conversation about what we finna do 4 years from now. Because because honestly, and you know, this is just this is just a personal thing for me. I do my morals and my values and my principles are very important to me. I'm not going to do anything if I feel like I'm going to compromise myself as a black man. So when it came to the election of 2020, I really could not force myself to that ballot box because I can't vote for one person who spews racist rhetoric, and I couldn't vote for the other person who is responsible for the age of mass incarceration, which we all know is the reason why a whole lot of brothers like us are in prison cells right now. I just couldn't force myself to do that. not only does it go against my principles, I feel like it would be super disrespectful to those brothers who are suffering behind those bars unjustly. So I just couldn't force myself to do it because I honestly didn't feel like things would change. And you know, if I get proven right 4 years from now and ain't nothing changed, then us as a community, we need to have an honest conversation about what we gonna do because we can't do this no more. Like I truly feel like we cannot keep doing this anymore. If we keep doing this, then you know our people not gonna be here for much longer, and that's not something I want to see. You know, I'm only 25, so you know I foresee, you know, I hope to grow, you know, and see a whole lot more. But I honestly feel like at the end of 4 years, we need to have an honest conversation. If they don't meet the expectations that their voters wanted them to meet, like we need to have an honest conversation and figure out what we're gonna do differently because we can't keep doing the same thing.
Now that's very interesting. You brought up something that we haven't really talked about much, and that is Joe Biden's crime bill, right? Like we know that the 94 crime bill, like you said, put hundreds of thousands of African American, particularly black men, guys that look just like us, guys that were probably right around our age in 1994 when the bill was written and passed. Why do you think that a lot of black people kind of, and this is for either one of you, why do you think a lot of black people kind of overlooked that, right? Like we were kind of told to shut up and just vote, you know, Joe Biden, even though like Joe Biden has a history of putting black folks in prison cells, right? Like that's not a rumor. That's not something I'm making up. Like that's something that's documented, right? Like Joe Biden has been on record calling someone that sounded a lot like me, that sound like what I look like, a predator, right? Like he didn't specifically say black people, but he said we got to put those predators away. They don't care if their parents were on drugs. I don't care what their background came from. We got to put those predators away. And then Hillary souped it up and called it super predators. So why is it that you think a lot of black people kind of just, you know, turned the other way? Is it because they hated Donald Trump that much, or just because they felt like Joe was the lesser of two evils? Why is that? Why do you think that kind of took place?
Honestly, I think it's the answer you just said. I really believe that like people were that scared of Donald Trump, and you know, I'm not downplaying Trump. You know, guy's a racist, terrible president. I'm not going to downplay Donald Trump, but at the same time, I don't think Trump was like this massive boogeyman that should have caused us to make excuses for the other side. You know, people say, "Oh, you know, we're not going to survive Donald Trump." You know, here we are 4 years later. You know,
very true. I mean, because we are. You're right. It's like he was the big, scary, you know, orange-headed man, you know, orange-faced man that was going to cause a civil war that was going to kill all the black people. But like you said, we survived 4 years, and I highly believe we could have survived another 4 years. And maybe I'm just crazy.
No, I mean, honestly, like we have to think about what all our people have survived. We survived a lot of shit, and Donald Trump is like, it's a low bar to compare to the shit that we have been through throughout this history of the United States. You know, so I do think you know a lot of that was fueled by the fear mongering of Donald Trump. And like I said, I'm not making excuses for Donald Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter or anything like that.
Not at all.
But at the same time, I did not think that man was that much of a boogeyman where we just had to completely forget about the transgressions that Biden did against us. Completely forget the transgressions that Kamala Harris did to Black Californians. I really just didn't think he was that much of a boogeyman for us to be fear monger into making excuses for, you know, what Joe Biden did.
Prince, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to simply answer the question, I think it's just a condition. Like I said earlier, it's just a whitewashing and conditioning of this is what we do. We know all we hear Democrat, that means they're for the black people. Okay, he may have a black vice president. Okay, that's cool. So we can do that. We can vote for that. But even deeper than that, I feel like our people are just black people. We're pretty much like a very just naturally like a loving and forgiving community. And I feel like that's what it really comes down to. Yeah, that and conditioning.
Very loving and very forgiving, because a lot has been done to Black people and you've never been compensated for it. A lot of mistreatment, a lot of deaths, a lot of blood is on the hands of America, and it has never been paid rightfully so. So I mean, it's scary to think about, but we are loving and a forgiving kind of people. Guys, I've held you for a very long time. I just want to get your final thoughts. It didn't mean it's been a long time, but a great discussion. Once again, it's Prince Holmes, Wolfgang Bronner. We guys are talking. There's just three Black men in our 20s talking about all the things that are happening within the Black community inside of America. So before we get out of here, you guys be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. It's a conversation people need to hear. But I just want to get you guys' final thoughts on anything, whether it's your thought, your message to the Black community is, we know we have a president, we have the people that the Black people chose, right? So what is your message to Black America right now to be able to progress? Because we talked about those income levels, and we know that wealth gap just continues to expand. So what is your message to Black America to try to help us go in the right direction, whether it's under Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Democratic leadership, or whatever? We'll start with you, Prince.
I mean, I feel like the biggest thing that we can do is change our mindsets and think for ourselves and our community in regards to trying to have our own, in regards to business, our own education and schooling, getting back to learning about our culture and our history. So I feel like economics is the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves. And I feel like that will give us respect to be a force for America to deal with. Like we mentioned earlier, we spend trillions of dollars in this, like 50 billion Black people. 50 million Black people in America. So if we can come together and learn how to spend our money, learn how to put our money together to create Black businesses, I feel like that will do, so much for us in this country. So
definitely think so. Wolfgang, you're up. Your message to the Black community.
My message to the Black community is like, and it's more in terms of the presidential years that we will be dealing with afterwards. I would just encourage my people to stay up to date on what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do. Stay up to date on them. That way, we're knowledgeable of what all they're doing. If they are doing anything for our community, just making sure that we're knowledgeable of it. Because I think one of the greatest mistakes some of us did was, we got too complacent and think everything was fine. And obviously we have been shown that, stuff is still the same. So my message is like, just stay up to date, do your research, ask questions, uplift, instill your mind with the knowledge of, the people that came before us. Because a lot of the things they talk about is a lot of things that we see. And oftentimes before I even speak on the issue, I oftentimes go and see that any of our ancestors speak on it. So that's my message. We've become politically more conscious over 4 years. So I would like to see us keep it up, actually hold these politicians accountable, and actually start demanding something and demanding the things that this country owes our people.
Definitely. Like you said, like you guys said, it starts from within. We take care of ourselves and we force these people to give us what we rightly deserve. And if you don't, you won't get our vote, you won't get our dollar, you won't get anything from us. But I think, like Prince said, it kind of starts from within our community. We just have to continue to educate ourselves, continue to be strong, because there's so much power in the Black vote, in the Black dollar, and within the Black community, that as long as we continue to build ourselves and work on ourselves and keep everything in-house, we will continue to expand and grow and become smarter and do things that are so attainable that some people don't even think is possible. And that's kind of just my thought to the Black community. Once again, I'm talking with Wolfgang Bronner, Prince Holmes. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is the Black Boss channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe as you leave. I'm sure we'll be talking to these brothers again sometime soon. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, fellas.